Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patricia Borger, Vice Chancellor of Development and Alumni Relations at UWM. I have the great honor of welcoming you to this afternoon's event. I am so glad you could be here with us today for our very first town hall with alumni and friends. And you might be interested to know there are over 260 of you who are joining us today. We thought the time was right, after about 14 months of being locked down, for us to get together in this way and give you an update and a look ahead. Of course, we have all missed getting together in person, and I wish I could see you right now and be with you in person right now. I know so many of you who are with us today. But you know, there are some benefits to our going virtual. For those of you who have experience at UWM, parking might come to mind as the very first benefit of being virtual. No problem finding a place to park for a virtual event. And of course, the virtual format allows us to invite our alumni and friends from across the country to join us. And I am delighted to tell you that we have alums on from coast to coast this evening, from Seattle to Boston. So welcome to all of you. During this hour, Chancellor Mone will tell us a little bit about what it's been like to lead a major university through a pandemic. And then he's also going to share a vision for UWM's future. And of course, if you think of a question during his presentation, please put it in the chat. And after the formal portion of this meeting is finished, then we'll go to the chat and we'll answer as many of your questions as we can. So now I invite Chancellor Mark Mone to join us so we can all hear news from UWM. Thank you so much.
Pat, thank you. This is just a wonderful event, and I want to thank you, Pat, for your leadership, for our development and alumni relations team that's helped put this event together. And what a special event it is. I couldn't be more happy to spend this time with you. And I'm just thrilled when I looked at the attendees and seen how this list has grown. I've just been blown away. We have incredible alumni. We have so many retirees, people who've built UWM. You have all, whether you're alumni, whether you're our friends, whether you're an elected official, we have so many incredible people on this call. I'm absolutely ecstatic. I'm over the top. I also have to tell you, I couldn't be happier to be in the position that I'm in today, to be at UWM for as long as I've been, having worked with so many of you, having seen where you've gone, if you're an alum, what you've done with the education that's been provided. It's truly transformational. I also believe that there's nothing that's more important than the mission and what we're doing every day at UW Milwaukee in terms of transforming lives. What we do in terms of opening the doors, creating incredible careers and futures, but really responding to an important societal need. There's not an institution that's more important, that's more relevant and critical in the world today than what we're doing at UW Milwaukee. So I'm passionate, I'm a huge Panther fan, and look forward to sharing some updates with you. I'll talk a little bit about the structure of the night, but you can see the title of the slide, the deck that we've got that I'll walk through. We'll spend about half our time on this, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. I really look forward to that. Thanks for being here. So the title is about transformation. So as much as we transform lives and organizations and society, we too are not immune from those same pressures. Higher ed today has faced remarkable pressures. And just to put this in perspective, I saw on the American Public and Land Grant University slide deck from the President's Council, the estimate is about $120 billion loss due to the pandemic. So put that in perspective, we're looking at UWM easily over $80 million revenue and significant losses because of increased costs. We did get a fair amount of that back through some of the federal funds that have been available, but not nearly enough to fill all the holes. And there's more questions going forward. So that's just a tip of the iceberg in terms of some of the things that we'll talk about. The structure that we'll use, and Abby, if you can give me control, thank you. The structure that we'll use for the comments include where we stand today. Let's take a snapshot of how we have transformed. I'll relate this concept a little bit further about why we're important, what we're doing to address critical needs that are happening in the state. I'll then speak about the future, the bold actions that are underway, share, as Pat described, our vision for change, and then open up for Q&A. So if we look at the stance, and this should be very much of interest to so many of you who have been at UWM or were at UWM at various times, let's take a look at where we are today. I think most of you know, but maybe not everybody knows, we have 3 campuses today. We have UWM at Washington County, we have UWM at Waukesha, and we have UW Milwaukee, and of course, the heart of the city. We've got various locations, but together in the fall, we had almost 25,000 students. Most of those students come from Wisconsin. About half of the remaining students are international, and about half of the rest come from other states. And we do typically cover most every state, although a majority of those students come from the Midwest. I'm really proud to say that we have graduated over 5,300 students for the last decade, every year. Think about that in terms of the contributions to the talent pipeline, especially when you think about how 4/5, 80% of those students stay in Wisconsin. And for some reason, after retirement, some people don't stick around Wisconsin. And of course, increasingly, people do find there's hot markets in Seattle or Atlanta or other cities, and they'll go there. But predominantly, our students come from Wisconsin and they stay in Wisconsin. It's a really neat thing about UW Milwaukee. We really like to say we're made in Milwaukee. We do shape the world in many, many ways. We have almost 200,000 alumni today. And as of graduation coming up here in a few weeks, I think we will be right at 200,000. That's pretty sizable for UW Milwaukee in terms of how recently we have been UW Milwaukee. We do have the greatest amount of diversity in the state. I'm going to come back to that point in a few minutes. But on every possible dimension, I encourage you, sometime take a look at the UW System Accountability Dashboard. And what you'll find is that, just for example, students of color, the average campus in the UW system has 1,700 students of color. Madison has a little bit less than 5,000, even though they're a campus that is sizably more than us. We have the #1 number of students of color, over 6,000 students of color. It's pretty phenomenal. I could share with you military veterans, same type of data. Go to every campus across the UW system, and we're going to have twice as many veterans as the next closest. In fact, you have to go outside of a 6-state region to find more military veterans and active military than on our campus. It's pretty remarkable. Similarly, top 25 to top 30 LGBTQ campus for the last 7 years running. Pretty amazing. Not top 25, not top 30%, but top 25 out of over 4,600 universities. There's a lot of intentionality around how we take care of and serve our diverse student population. And that really is the bottom line on this slide, which is about, we're a research university, Research One, top 131 universities in the country, but we're also an access university. We provide opportunities for education that, simply put, individuals would not have without UW Milwaukee. There's a story that I'd like to share with you. It's actually a number of stories about students' perspective, and I love hearing from students. That's one of the most important voices that we relish and why we're here. So let's hear it from students at UW Milwaukee.
UW Milwaukee was my first choice because it has a top business school.
Because I wanted to go to a diverse campus with supportive resources.
Because of its leading engineering school.
Because they connect students with internships at Fortune 500 companies.
UWM was my first choice. They have strong programs for health professionals.
Because its green campus is helping me get involved in sustainability.
UW Milwaukee was my first choice because they helped me discover my passion for public health. Make it yours.
So is that a neat commercial or what? We love that. That's just one of the spots that we have, and it's part of an important branding campaign about Milwaukee as a first choice. It's pretty neat. And I have to tell you, my son, who graduated, he's a double alum of the Lubar Business School, UW Milwaukee, he could fit right into that commercial. It was his first choice, and it's pretty special in terms of how from a parental perspective, you see the value. Many of you know this personally as well. It's pretty neat. So why are we so important? What's the big deal here? I will tell you increasingly why a campus like UWM matters, what we're doing. Name the problem that's happening in the state and, frankly, larger country and beyond. We have people who are working on those issues. I could pull the headlines out, and what's really neat is that there are every day between 8 115 stories that we see every day about UWM. We get the clip sheet, and we see collectively so many hundreds of stories about UWM researchers, graduates, community engagement, the types of things we're doing with partners. Here's just a few. The workforce shortage. That's such a vexing issue. Recently, the Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce started a concept around the region of choice. We have left too many people behind. Well, take our diverse campus and take 5,300 or more students per year going into the talent pipeline. That's a pretty good solution. Second area, the education achievement gap. I'm going to talk at length about, not at length, I don't have that much time tonight, but I'm going to talk in detail about that, how we're closing that. But I just want you to know that is a critical priority for me. We've always been a student that has attracted and had many diverse graduates, but we have to do a better job at getting more people over the hurdle. And this is something that campuses across the country are dealing with. In Wisconsin, it's particularly acute because the high school graduation gap is the largest in the country. And I'm going to give some more data on that in a few minutes, but we're doing a number of great things to address that. The basis for facts, you can see on this slide, the basis for how our researchers are trying to continue to not only make sure we have the facts and the data, but we're working on solutions. We work with the Medical College and MSOE, Milwaukee School of Engineering, Marquette University, with a clinical translation science institute. And we have received over $20 million in federal funding over the last dozen years for our scientists to work together on issues. And I'm really proud to say that we generated, through this collaborative work, dozens of proposals, and today have a lot of funded research and a lot of activities, not only in the healthcare field, but in engineering and other behavioral health types of things. Really powerful. And of course, at the bottom, Freshwater Collaborative. That's something that we could talk about a lot, but UWM is leading that. So think about problems with respect to water, whether it's around lead pipes, whether it's around PFAS or the forever chemicals, you name the issues that are important in agriculture or tourism. We have identified 10 grand water challenges, and we've created a collaborative across the University of Wisconsin system to provide talent, to solve problems through research, to talk about policy issues, really important for our future. And then on the right-hand side, we have colleagues, scholars, and engaged students who are working on the issues of the day around equity, social justice, and other issues in terms of researching, chronicling issues, but also talking about policy, things that matter. So UWM today, what's happening in terms of the look back and how we got through the first parts of the pandemic and how we're going forward. You see here a picture of the individual who received our 10,000th vaccine. So we have today over 12,000 people who have received vaccines on our campus. Great partnership with Advocate Aurora Health. But let me back up. We flipped really quickly, and we also became a testing site. In fact, 50% of the tests in the state of Wisconsin have been conducted on a UW system campus. We continue to have the lowest percent of infections, COVID infections, with less than 1% as we track these. So the safest place to be is our campus. And then if you want a vaccine, come on, we're open for that. So we're really pillars of public health in terms of creating these types of solutions for societal health. The modalities, what's happened on our campus? Well, we were affected quite quickly in terms of how we had to refund student dorm and the residential hall and dining and parking, as Pat talked about. We had to refund that as we had to pivot in March of 2020. Our research and labs had to figure out ways to try to keep the research going as well as we could as a Research One institution. So a lot of particular PPE issues and logistics as we had to move so many things remote. And then, of course, what I'm so proud of is our remarkable faculty and staff who were able to pivot in a couple of weeks to put everything online. And it's remarkable how quickly and how effectively we did that. And the bottom line on this slide really speaks about cultivating a strength. A lot of people don't know that UW-Milwaukee already, before the pandemic, led the state in terms of online programs. We had 11,500 students part-time, 2,000 students full-time. We have 40 of our degree programs online, many top ranked. And so it was easier for us to pivot than a lot of campuses, and we'll never go back completely. We're going to see more hybrid approaches to work, just like many of you in your workplaces today. But this is something that did enable us to move quickly. Let's take a look ahead. Obviously, financials, as much as we are an educational institution, we're also very much business-minded. And as we look at the importance of funding, I think you know, as a public institution, many of you have long history with UW-Milwaukee. You know this is the plight facing many institutions of public higher education. We have been essentially defunded. And let me show you why I say that. This is a slide that has a lot of lines on it, and I'm just going to try to keep it really straightforward. What you see here are three predominant things. There's that cluster in the middle, that cluster of all those colored lines, starting at 100 in 2006. And that cluster shows in real dollars what the funding has been for regional public universities over the last basically 12 to 14 years. And what you can see is that a lot of funding went down, but it's been going up. That blue line that takes the big dip down and comes up, that's Illinois. And our enrollments when Illinois was having all the state funding issues really grew. But they got their act together in 2016 and they've turned it around. But guess what the red line is? You know it. It's Wisconsin. So the University of Wisconsin system in real dollars, and this is the sad part of the story, we're only coming back to 60 cents on the dollar compared to where we were in 2006. We, in addition, have had, because of demographics, enrollment declines, and we've also had a tuition freeze. So when I talk about the criticality of funding, as we move on to this idea, this is absolutely essential, and it's meant that we've had to shrink our footprint and really been constrained. It's not a good way to run a business. It's not a lot of fun, but we, at the same time, have made incredible momentum. We became a Research One in 2016, and we've had it renewed 2 additional times. It's pretty amazing. So we increasingly turn to other revenue sources. What do I mean by that? Well, we're looking at a lot of creative opportunities from Innovation Campus, where we have land and revenue opportunities there, but it's especially around partnerships. So take a look, and this is just a few of the great partnerships that are underway. Critical in the top left, the Connected Systems Institute. The primary engines of this include Rockwell Automation, but we've got Microsoft that's also a significant contributor. These are where we have our star alumni, Satya Nadella, and who started with Keith Nosbush. Today it's Blake Moret at Rockwell in terms of the CEOs that are all in terms of helping with the Internet of Things, smart connected devices, talent for that. So it's about education, but it's also about research and partnerships. And then really solving problems. Again, Connected Systems Institute, really neat. We're going to showcase this for the Board of Regents coming up in early June. The Freshwater Collaborative, lower left, I've already talked about. That's a system-wide activity. And by the way, we've achieved pretty remarkable funding to replace the Niske. We've achieved about $13 million toward the $15 million research vessel. So I hope that we can close the deal and work on building that ship in Wisconsin. It will be the most advanced research vessel on the Great Lakes, being able to do year-round research and education at about 2.5 to 3 times the capacity of our current Korean War vintage Niske. Top right, Tech Ed Frontiers. I call this the platform to the future. We just had a great alum story, Michael Finland, Vice President. He's the Chief People Officer for PricewaterhouseCoopers, 276,000 employees, 157 countries. He is talking about digital upskilling as the future. There's a lot of employees across the globe left behind. There's a lot of people under or unemployed who can be expeditiously educated through certificate and badging types of programs that can lead to degrees. This is the future. It's so important. So the Tech Ed Frontiers is our platform in conjunction with state funding and other partnerships that we have to move this forward. So this is really exciting. And this is, from a revenue perspective, I believe one of the most important directions we should be going. Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute, some of you probably heard about that. That's a $40 million undertaking with Marquette and UW-Milwaukee leading the way with Northwestern Mutual sponsorship and support. It's a big deal. It's about the careers of the future. It's about, again, guess what? Research, solving issues that we all know are so prevalent when we talk about all the data that increasingly abounds, and how do we turn that into useful information for decision-making, policy, understanding, a number of different applications. Within the data science or DS realm, we look at issues around cybersecurity, data analytics, visualization, the types of issues that are just around us all the time. So these are the future types of things that shape our campus in so many ways. As we look forward, the bottom 2 points here really speak to the same idea. When I ask the question, how do 18 to 25-year-old undergraduates learn? When I think about our faculty and staff, how do we research most effectively? How do we build community? How do we engage with Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and beyond? You know the answer to that. It's so important for us to be back. It's so important for us, as I talk with students. Yesterday, I visited with our outgoing student association leaders. That's their number one piece of advice as I ask them, how should we be thinking about the future? They want everybody to be back. It's so important. So that's what we're planning for in the healthy, safety way, safest way we can. Now, one of the things that's a big deal for me, and it's really important for, I believe, all of us, as we talk about a number of critical priorities, is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why do I say that? What's the importance? Well, first of all, it's the world. It's recognizing that our students and really society is more diverse than ever, and our campus is the most diverse. Well, are we living up to that? Are we not just accepting and admitting students, but are we making the commitment that's necessary for everybody to be successful? And I can tell you Milwaukee has problems by not addressing this. We're a city, if you look at United Shades of America, which is on CNN right now, the Milwaukee special was on Sunday night. I encourage you to take a look at that. We work with the Hispanic Collaborative and Hispanic professionals of Greater Milwaukee. We work with the Milwaukee Urban League. They have shared data that shows in this city, we have an overrepresentation of individuals in occupations that are less than $40,000 a year in terms of retail, agriculture, and hospitality types of jobs, and a significant underrepresentation of individuals over $40,000. So the professional, managerial, computer science, nursing degrees, those are largely absent. So the point of this, you see the retention and graduation rates, they're not uniformly successful. Let me show you a slide that puts this in perspective. This is just not a positive story, but let's stand back and put this in the right perspective. M7, most of you probably know, that's the southeastern 7 counties in Wisconsin. Across the average of this, and the reason I know this comes from a group that I chair. It's called the Higher Ed Regional Alliance. We have all 18 2-year, 4-year academic institutions at the table, and we're working on completion, partnerships with universities, with each other, and we also are looking at better linkages with employers. In that context of Higher Ed Regional Alliance, Hera, she was a powerful Greek god. The alternative was Rhea, but we like Hera better. She was more inspirational. Look up your Greek mythology and you'll find pretty powerful stuff. We have 11 community-based organizations at the table at the same time. We just had our steering committee meeting today. All the momentum, all the great successes that we've had address this problem on this slide. Take 20 high school students across the region. This is the average. Take 20 high school freshmen. This is challenging. Only 17 of those students on average will graduate from high school. Only 12 of them will, after high school, become college students. And unfortunately, even looking out 6 years beyond the end of their beginning of college, only 5 of those students are going to graduate from college. Now, if I were to break that down by race, I can tell you that the achievement gap that starts before even K-12, the achievement gap that starts at ages 3 and 4, when we look at reading scores, math capabilities, it becomes so significant that Wisconsin has the #1 achievement gap in Black versus white high school graduation rates, and it has the 43rd worst in Hispanic versus white. Well, that gap continues such that if you were to break this out by race, you would find that in students of color, you'd only be getting 2 or 2 point something out of those students that are at the bottom of this slide. That's simply not going to get us to where we have the equity and the achievement gaps resolved. So that's why we're so focused on this. So there's a number of things that we're doing. And I'd like to just jump right to some of those actions and show you what we're doing to help. I won't go through these in great detail, but I want you to know in 2014, when I became interim chancellor, I signed in blood, so to speak, with Vicki Martin, president of MATC, who happens to be a Panther, as well as Darian Driver, who is the superintendent of MPS. We formed a bond and we said we've got to do more. And we have committed and we've helped MPS graduate at 11% higher rate. We have more students coming to UWM and MATC than ever before, and they're getting through faster at a cheaper affordability level because we're able to start them earlier in high school with college classes through early college prep. Number of things that we're doing there, from employment to education. The Higher Ed Regional Alliance, I talked about that already. That's HERA. Moonshot for Equity is something that we just initiated in the last year. And this is a big deal because the goal of Moonshot for Equity is to completely eliminate that achievement gap by 2030. If we can put somebody on the moon, we can certainly solve this problem. And we're taking bold actions to get there. We have formed partnerships with other higher ed institutions. We've got support from the Education Advisory Board. We've got 15 best practices and groups that are action oriented, and we're busting silos. We're really working on a lot of things, but we're just getting started. So it's going to take a while to really see the impact. Our health programs I've talked about in terms of a number of things that are so important for our community, and a healthier community is a foundation for better education. And I've mentioned already the region of choice. Employers love the fact that we are members of the region of choice because we're the biggest provider of the most diverse talent. So for over 110 organizations to say they're going to be 25% more diverse in 5 years in the leadership ranks, and they're going to have 15% of their employees more diverse than they are today, that is where UWM can really be a huge help. So looking forward, as we turn the corner and talk about where are we going beyond these partnerships, beyond all the things that we're doing to address diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think through my comments, you can probably appreciate there's significant disruption hitting higher ed. Not only the financial losses before the pandemic, but I have to say, having been at UWM for 32 years, having been in higher ed for longer than that, this is an industry that is overdue for change. The financial model supporting higher education, public or private, broke a long time ago. So we've got financial issues. We've got a demographic that I often say we're running out of teenagers. And the Northeast United States is the most challenged. The Midwest is the second most challenged, but it's not healthy for anybody. We've got a lot of societal issues on the value of degrees. We have to do a better job with our campaigns in terms of the importance. So a couple of years ago, I charged a group, and it had a lot of faculty, staff, and students, some administrators, but I wanted a lot of fresh thinking, and I wanted it to be organic. I'm a big believer in shared governance. This is critical. Let's get the best ideas from people who are involved. This group put a plan together, and then we took it forward and we built around implementation activities. And so we're rolling out now, and we have been for some time, a lot of the actions around what we call Think Tank 2030. And we recognize because of the pandemic that 2030 is now. We have got to take these actions head on. So the 4 primary themes include reforming completely the undergraduate experience, becoming student-centric, really looking at things in a student perspective, meeting students where they are, as opposed to some of the bureaucracy and some of the rules and hidebound ways that higher ed can be. Second theme is to be radically welcoming. This is for our employees as well as our students, so it's a cultural change. Realigning our schools and colleges. We've had the same schools and colleges in place since the 1950s and 60s in our roots. What's the right agile approach today? Think about the number of healthcare schools and colleges that we've got, or think about some of the information sciences, or think about a number of different ways we can integrate and consolidate, make UWM stronger, help with student pathways, work on the curriculum alignment, really move forward. And then, of course, as a Research One university, it's critically important for us to not just maintain, but to build on and increase the research excellence. That's the heart of a lot of these partnerships. I spend a lot of time with, as you can imagine, this is high budget season. I had a dozen legislators on a call for an hour today, and we talk about these things. Yesterday, every day I'm with 1, 2, or like today, a dozen legislators. We will, by the time this month is over, we will have visited with almost 50 legislators, every member of the Joint Finance Committee, and these are the themes. And I won't go through them all, but I want to select a few of them. The Wisconsin tuition promise. That's the largest request from the UW system that Governor Evers advocated for, because it's going to help students, particularly those that are Pell Grant eligible, of which UWM has the largest number in the state, in the UW system. It's really going to help students with that unmet need. Big deal for us. Employee compensation, we've got to continue to stress that. We had many biennial budgets where we had 0% increase. Can you imagine? 0% for year after year for increasing. Well, you just fall behind. And we select faculty and staff from national and international talent pools. We've got to be able to be competitive on a salary front. And then, of course, the biggest #1 capital budget request is the former Columbia St. Mary's, which we purchased in 2010. We're asking for a continued funding stream for that, for being able to have our College of Health Science supplement our nursing simulation center, and those areas work together. So those are some of the big areas. And while I have you, I would ask for your advocacy, anything you can do on a number of fronts. Legislators, and we can certainly follow up with everybody in terms of legislative contact information, supporting our students, as so many of you have done in terms of the scholarships and chaired professors and things that you've endowed, and centers and institutes that you've been involved with. That's so important for our students. And then telling your stories. So many of you I'm just thrilled with, and one of the favorite things that Pat Borger and I get to do, and others on the development side, as we visit and we spend time with our alumni, it's just remarkable what you've done, where you've gone, and how you continue to give in so many different ways. So wrapping up, what does UWM mean? I love how we put this together for our graduates. What doors are open when I talk about the transformational difference that a degree from UWM means? Employment, let's start with that. What's more important? And that's foundational, because that gives earnings, and we know the data, over $1 million income differential over life. Here's an interesting stat. When you look at who's recovered from the pandemic, where the jobs have come back, it's 90+% of the reemployed individuals who are displaced have college degrees. It's just phenomenal, the power of degree. I won't go through all of these. You can see on the left-hand side what a degree means for our graduates. On the right-hand side, start at the bottom. The importance of an educated society for democracy, the value and the critical aspect. And frankly, I from a conscience perspective, I wonder how much more we can and must be doing as a sector for education to be much more widespread. How can we increase the affordability and access for this? Higher engagement from citizens, individuals who give back, who make their communities richer in so many ways, and so forth. So those are the things that UWM is all about. And to pull this all together, I think we can show a video at the end that really pulls it all together. But let's now flip over to Q&A. We've got a lot of time for questions and answers. We do have a thank you video. Pat, do you want to hold off on the video until we wrap it all up? Okay, we'll do that. So we got some questions, Pat.
We have several questions. So we'll start from the top and see how far we get. So you're on the spot, Chancellor.
Okay, all right.
The diversity data, high school graduations you shared in one slide is from 2013. Has there been any significant change in the past 7 to 8 years?
Okay, so let's clarify. We had to start with the class. The only way you can get the graduation data is you have to go back in time to start with those students that were there. This is real-time data. This is the latest and greatest data that you can possibly get. So this means that students who began high school or began the college, that's what it goes back to. This is the most current data that are available, and it tracks up to, I think it's 2019 numbers looking back at when those students started school. So that's what that is. That's real, that's right now. And we have a HERA website as far as a follow-up, and you can look at the information in much greater detail. You can break it out by county. You can break it out by ethnicity and race. You can break it out by a lot of different things, but it's pretty real time.
Okay, very good. Good to know. Next question. I've read a lot about how remote learning has affected students, so I'm interested in what you've heard from UWM students about this experience. What issues has this raised? And it occurs to me that this might have affected their ability to serve internships. Could you talk a little bit? How are our students faring?
Yeah, this is a tale of two different perspectives on this. First, in the first place, I can share with you in the first semester. So let's talk about actual data. Nationally, students gave a thumbs. The numbers were about 70% thumbs down nationally, college students, for the online remote learning, 30% positive, I like it, it's a continuation. UWM was almost the exact opposite. Again, going back to what was good for us, what we could naturally transition to. We weren't quite at 70 thumbs up, but we were in the high 60s. And that's not high enough. You'd want to be higher, but compared to national trends. So good news there. But then here we are a year later, and students, as I mentioned earlier, uniformly want to be back, but they have given us a lot of credit for how well we've done this. I can tell you nationally, students pulled back and said 10% fewer are going to college. That's the overall enrollment decline. We saw enrollment declines on some campuses this fall. Georgetown, 25% enrollment decline fall 20 to fall 19. That's the magnitude of this. Our students uniformly have told me how much they want to be back, but they want flexibility. I had a question with our student association leadership, and they came up with several themes. And one of them was, the quote was, next fall, it's going to be odd. And I said, what do you mean? And as much as students want to be back, there are some who are going to be a little bit afraid. They're going to be concerned. And so it's not this uniform one size fits all. So what we're doing to address that is we're outfitting all our classes with remote learning capabilities. So it'll give the students the option, if they just can't come to class, they have health concerns, their parents are concerned, let's give them that flexibility. So that's really kind of some of the themes that are coming through. And of course, I want to reinforce health, safety, that, the social, the distancing, all those types of things are really important. Now, there was another part of that question, Pat. I missed what's
internships.
The internships. This is surprising. At first, internships went off a cliff. Last spring, companies weren't ready to do this. But I can tell you, companies have zoomed up. And just today, I had a touch base with, we had our Higher Ed Regional Alliance meeting. We had the goal groups report out. And interestingly, our industry forum groups are talking about how they're getting a lot more students who like and want to do the virtual internships, because guess what? They can go and do an internship in Chicago without having to leave Milwaukee. They can do an internship in New York or LA, boom, right from here. So they get this global experience in a powerful way. They get exposed to different types of companies. So I'm really proud of what our career and internship and placement services have done. And the whole concept of experiential learning, that's part of us becoming a radically welcoming and a student-centric organization. We want every student to have those types of things. Experiential work can happen virtually today, but companies have gotten a lot more creative. So it's a win.
Very good. The questions keep coming.
Great.
What impact has the addition of the other two campuses you mentioned, Washington County and Waukesha, had on the UWM curriculum?
So the pathway that we want to develop that's most important, I think, is when you think about our access mission, what's vital is to recognize the value and the impact. Those campuses have price points that are about half of what UWM's main campus is, and they provide high quality education for the first 2 years. So the integration of those campuses really provides more opportunities for students to have a UWM education at a lower price point and really open the doors up. The challenges, of course, is that 2-year campuses nationally have had significant declines. In fact, in the state of Wisconsin, it's been over a 50% decline. So the concept of a curricular integration is a little bit challenged, and we can't have some of the same enrollment numbers that we'd like to have. So what we've done in terms of one of the big curriculum developments is started to look at Outposts in Waukesha and to some extent Washington County, where we will have 4-year degrees on those campuses. So the first ones that will be there will be an expansion in the nursing area. Then we've got business and engineering as fast followers. So those are some curriculum strength areas. But I want to also tell our audience 2 other things about the value and the challenges of 2-year campuses. The obvious one is enrollment and financials. That's the big challenge that we have. But we're really happy, especially like the Waukesha. Waukesha County has 400,000 people. That, I think, long-term is going to be a great growth potential. Here's the big advantage. We have Milwaukee historically as a blue city. Waukesha and Washington County are red. What a great way to have bipartisan support in the legislature for UWM today. It's powerful. And I'm telling you, when I have these conversations with legislators, I can build coalitions that I've never been able to build before. And it's helped us. Our chemistry building is a direct result of that. The new chemistry building that replaces the antiquated one, and many of you might remember when you were there, it was not a place. So these are the realities and the value of having those 2 additional campuses.
Okay, next question. There's been press coverage questioning the value of a college degree. I've also read about employers who are hiring individuals who do not have college degrees, but they're looking for certificates or something less than a degree. Could you talk about that, and what is UWM doing about this?
Great question, really important. Let me start with the last part of the question first. Tech Ed Frontiers is the simple answer that I talked about as the platform to the future. And referring to Mike Finland, Chief People Officer, he is not alone in that. I had a conversation with the Education Advisory Board today, and they talk about the future 21st century workforce. Employers increasingly are not as much looking at degrees, but competencies. That's what they need. They don't have time with the technological sophistication, the way the world is transforming so quickly. Who has time to go back and get a 2 or 4-year degree? We need those skills right now. And so Tech Ed Frontiers is our platform to that. It's certificates, it's badges, and guess what? It has built-in credit options, so it can lead to, think of stackable ways to build certificates into credit bearing courses and degrees. So it's a really neat array. It is huge, and it's responsive to employer needs. And let's go to the first part of the question, which is, what is the value of a degree today? I can tell you off the top of my head, it's the employment differential, it's who's recovered from the pandemic, individuals with degrees. But let's talk about this more fundamentally. We have to do a better job in higher education demonstrating the ways that students contribute, and with a degree, how you contribute to workforces and how this means something important from employment. Let me give you a specific example. I'd love to share the data and a graphic that we created. I went through and I identified what are the fastest growing fields in Wisconsin, what are the highest demand jobs before the pandemic. And these fall into 4 buckets. You can imagine you've got business, all the fields in business, accounting, supply chain management, marketing, all the fields in business, one pillar. Healthcare, whether you're talking about OT, PT, psychology, go through the medical fields, boom, second bucket. Nurses, right? Front of the field. Third, computer science, engineering. And the 4th bucket is all the STEM related fields. 80% of UW Milwaukee students go into those fields and are employed dramatically at high levels. 98% of our health science students before they're graduating. I mean, the numbers in business, this is where our students go. Now, that's not to take anything away from the other fields, the arts and areas, political science, history. These students go on and do incredible things. Criminal justice, the number of police chiefs in the state from UWM, you drop your jaws, the types of careers, but they're not the fastest growth. They're not the highest demand. But that's what's really important about a degree. We need to share that story. We need to talk that up more.
Chancellor, you are so excited when you talk about that. I love it. I love the enthusiasm. That's my little editorial comment here in the middle as I'm working my way through these questions. So.
Nothing's more important. Nothing I'd rather be doing. This is so important. And I'm just so thrilled and honored to be in this position to really be our champion. And Pat, you're the same way. It's a great, great story.
Great story. Okay, next question. What will campus look like in the fall in terms of in-person activity? Will students, faculty, and staff have the option to continue virtual work and learning if they choose? Will events be socially distanced?
The answer to those is with qualifiers, affirmative, yes, in many of those ways. Let's break it down a little and not go too far into the weeds. This is something that we study and we meet on topics around this daily because we're planning for the fall. Highest level, we want to be 75% face-to-face. So we want to resume that as close to normalcy as we can. Now, there's some contingencies. We have to have Milwaukee Health Department. There's things that are a little out of our control. There's CDC guidance, there's UW system, there's the state of Wisconsin. There's a lot of layers of what you can and can't do. We just got, for example, a release, a permission that on Monday I could put a message out to campus that said, you no longer have to be tested if you've been fully vaccinated. That's a breakthrough. We were the only municipality in the state that was requiring that. So that's a huge breakthrough. So those are the types of things we have to deal with. But as I've mentioned in my comments, it's so important for us to be back face to face and to provide those types of options. Now, for employees, we want to be back because of what I said earlier. How do students learn? How do we build community as much as possible? There are some jobs where people can and will be able to work remotely. There's some jobs you can't. As this campus gets back up to speed, if you use a wrench, or if you're somebody who's on the custodial side, and we need those buildings cleaned in PPE, those are the types of jobs we've got to be in person for. The faculty question, for us to get to 75%, we obviously need to have as many people back as we can, keeping in mind before the pandemic, we were at about only 83%. So we really need to go back to that. As far as the events, the social events, last part of the question, this is something that we have been practicing for this summer. We have now approved events for up to 150 people to be on our campus. So think about the Zolazo Center, or think about some of our arts programs and things in the Fine Arts Building or other areas. We are going to allow events inside for up to 150 people with social distancing, the PPE, the guidance that we'll be following as much as necessary for inside, how you enter a room, how you plexiglass in different places. All of that, our campus is already built in, and we're doing that right now. We're at about 25% right now in terms of occupancy, but we're not doing the events. So yeah, we're going to use the summer. We're going to roll into those, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're the first campus that is going to host a Board of Regents meeting in a year and a half. Think about that, a year and a half that no campus has been visited. Well, June 3rd, 4th, the Regents are coming to Milwaukee, and we're going to have events up to 50 people. We're going to tour the Connected Systems Institute. We're going to have the CEO and the SVP from Rockwell Automation talking about how proud they are to partner with us. We've got 10 workstations. This is an on-campus type of event. So we're going to do things. We're going to get back to normal. We have to be leaders in this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, next question. A recent article in the Journal Sentinel was critical of Wisconsin's status with respect to startups. Could you talk about UWM's role in helping startups?
Absolutely. This is something that we began. I shared with you some of the partnerships on a slide, and one that preceded several of those partnerships is our Lubar Entrepreneurship Center. And I'm so grateful for the Lubars and many other amazing donors who've come forward, stepped up, some individuals, some corporations, some foundations that have really made a big difference in terms of helping us develop something that's a breakthrough. This is a new concept for how our universities can operate around entrepreneurship and innovation. And let me talk about what we're doing and then talk specifically about the startup. Our role as an educational institution, and I think we share this with the Lubar family, is to create across all majors, no matter what your field is, whether you're in the health side of things, in education, in the arts, or business, or engineering, across the entire campus. We want all our students to be more entrepreneurial, more innovative, so that they can start up companies. If you think about the types of things such as Fixation Bicycle Company, those are some of our graduates. If you think about Julie Waterman and Indulgence Chocolates, incredible startups. If you think about so many startups that have come out of UWM, many of them have been spawned by the types of thinking that are happening in the Lubar Entrepreneurship Center. So we have the Student Startup Challenge. We have the NSF-funded I-Corps. We have a number of programs where students come in and they get education, but they also get this add-on value of how to start a company, how to create innovation as employees of any organization, whether it's their own or others. So with that principle, our focus has been on giving all students this education. And what we see in terms of the startup economy is the number of patents, the number of funds that have been raised. We have increased every year dramatically, but we're starting from a lower threshold. We don't have some of the research and innovation long-term history. And I think the point of that article, I haven't read it entirely. I've heard some people talking about it. I think one of the themes was, and I've heard this for a long time in Milwaukee, there's a lot of funding that the funds flow to the coasts. A lot of the money, we're a very conservative culture. Startup and entrepreneurial economy is very hard in Milwaukee. So I think it's a commentary on that. And we're trying to knock that down. So we are working in exciting and new ways to really create the material, the entrepreneurial work that can come out of that. I'll give you an example. Front Desk is a neat example of a company that started out of UW Milwaukee graduate with another fellow in the community, who they together took this company where they find rental units and condos and other units that they want to help fill that unused space. So this company called Front Desk started. They had 300 employees before the pandemic. They've had to scale back. Now they're growing back again. This is the startup that was spawned out of UW Milwaukee's innovation, Lubar entrepreneurship sort of work with one of our star graduates from UWM, who's really helped build this rocket ship. And there's many, many other examples. Some of the work that's happening around the lithium ion batteries with two of our physicists, who one is our graduate school dean, Maria Josephaska, Maria and Carol, her colleague, who have created this company that has gotten several rounds of funding that will transform batteries, which we all need, longer life, more affordable batteries on all these different applications. So I could go on at length about this, but we will do our part, and we just have to keep stepping it up and working with all the different partners that can come forward and really help fund a lot of this innovation.
Very good. Next one. We're covering a lot of territory with these questions.
Love it. Love it. Yep.
What is happening with some of UWM's aging facilities, such as EMS and chemistry? What is the plan for building renewal on the Milwaukee campus?
Let's take those two buildings head on, because the first one is a huge victory. We have received state approval. We've gotten through all the hurdles on the chemistry building. So the great news is our chemistry building is being replaced. In fact, the fence went up this week. So headline, the fence for the new chemistry building. You know what that means? You know, we're going to be building on the southwest corner of our campus a new chemistry building. EMS, also known as Engineering Mathematical Sciences, that building is our next major capital project. Governor Walker gave pre-enumeration for planning funds, and we have expanded and built on that. So we're in the planning stages, and that's our next major capital project after the Northwest Quad, which I talked about earlier in terms of the continuation. The Columbia St. Mary's, also known as Northwest Quad, that's front and center in this biennial budget. Then the next biennial budget has EMS replacement. So those are exciting initiatives. You know, you hear about the Madison facade falling off, and Governor Thompson uses that example. Wait till the regents are here and we'll see what kind of facade we can arrange. No, just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, so we have definitely got to address this, and it's very important. And that's why we need to have people back on campus to show how we're using the facilities that we've got. And so you see the tension with, oh, I just want to work at home. Well, if we're only 40% using our buildings, it's kind of hard to justify having taxpayers expand our physical footprint or replace our physical footprint if people work at home.
Okay, we have time for a couple more, I think. Here's one that I love. I may give some statistics and then turn it over to you to talk metaphysically about it. How's that?
Okay.
I heard that UWM recently had a day of giving. Can you tell us the results of that effort? So I'll take this one. I happen to have these at my fingertips, right? So we did have our very first day of giving on April 14th, which is 414, Milwaukee's area code. Our first ever. We had planned to do our first one last year and the pandemic happened, and so we delayed it to this year. We were delighted with the response from our friends. 1,232 donors contributed $347,064. So $347,064. Most donors gave to the Chancellor Student Success Fund. However, the Lubar School of Business won the prize for most dollars raised out of that amount. They raised over 101,000 of that total. So Chancellor, anything you want to say about Day of Giving?
I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for our internal organization, Pat, you and your team that created that, but so much for the friends and so many of you on this call that contributed to that. The immediate needs from the Chancellor Student Success Funds include food insecurity, which is a critical issue, helping with rent, helping with technology connections. It's all about the students, and I'm so pleased. You know, Sarah, my wife, and I developed the Chancellor Student Success Fund, and I'm so pleased with so many people who've stepped forward and made a big difference. These are addressing the critical unmet needs that students have increasingly today. We had to put a lot of students, and not just us, but a lot of students were put out of work. You have helped with student completion. What could be more gratifying? So thank you for stepping up. And for our first year out of the gate, to be able to do that, over $250,000, it blew away our expectations. Pat, I think our expectations were about a sixth or an eighth of that. Seriously.
We didn't publish those expectations. I think maybe this will be the last one. Are there any plans to switch UWM's name to University of Milwaukee for better branding? Many state schools have gotten away from using the state extension name.
You know, I've been here a long time, and that issue has risen and fallen, and it's interesting that is asked. It's not on our radar right now. The issues we're dealing with are quite significant. The branding issue, I will have to tell you, is vitally important for us. I don't know if University of Milwaukee would give us the bump that some people might think it would. There's other things that I think we can do that are more important for that. I think there's a lot of things that as we are better able to tell our story, our alumni stories, and the important accomplishments around whether it's research, whether it's around transformational, educational, healthcare, the arts, and other things that we're doing, not just in this community, but really on a large level. That's the brand, it's the substance of that. The name, University of Milwaukee, there's a lot of legislative issues, there's a lot of history. I don't know how much freedom, I don't know if we want to fight that fight, if it's worth it compared to the things that we're trying to move forward, but it's worth considering.
Very good. We have several questions we didn't have time to get to this evening. So I think what we'll do, because we know who submitted the questions, we'll respond to you individually. So that we'll be sure to answer all the questions that came up from this. So with that, Chancellor, do you want to wrap this up?
I would love to. And before we show this video, I want to thank everyone for their engagement, not just tonight and your interest that you've shown. And I'm just thrilled to have this opportunity, but for everything you've done to build us. Everything we've accomplished, I've talked about tonight, is because of you. You have contributed, you have given for many of you, decades of your lives. For so many of you, you've given back and you've made such a big difference. That's what enables us. And that's why I'm so excited, despite the headwinds that face us. That's why I'm so excited about our future. We couldn't do it without you. So thanks most sincerely. Pat, back to you. Whether we share the video or you have any final comments, let's do it.
I add my thanks. And I think the best way for us to say thank you to all of you for joining us is for this video.
Thank you for your gift to UW Milwaukee. Your gift makes us smile and cheer.
Thanks again, everyone,